All right, good morning, everybody. I think this is probably as close as we've had to a whole school assembly this year, which is kind of crazy to say considering we're in January. I know it's virtual, so it's a little bit different than what we would normally do if we were all in the building together and be able to jump around from place to place and hear all our speakers in person. But I think this is the next best thing, and we're fortunate we have the technology this year to try to be able to make this happen. So I want to welcome you to our what I think is our second health and wellness fair, and our first time that we've done this virtually. I think as we head into a new year, making sure that we're taking care of our bodies and minds is more important than ever, especially given what we've all faced over the course of 2020. So today gives us a great opportunity to recharge, to refresh, and I hope in some ways to be able to step out of our comfort zones, to try something new along the way. The whole school speakers that we have for you today are fantastic. They have some incredibly powerful messages to share with you, and I know you're going to take a lot from all three of them that will be speaking today. Whatever you signed up for in your breakout sessions, whether it be boxing, skincare, mindful doodling, self-defense, or any of the other incredible options that are offered to you today, I'd ask you to open your mind, try something new, and get the most out of your sessions. You have a great opportunity here from the comfort of your own home to be able to do something a little bit different, fresh, and new today without, I guess, maybe feeling like you're being judged or you're having somebody looking at you. So use that opportunity, take advantage of that to try something new and enjoy those sessions. Before we start with our first presenter today, I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you to all the people that are going to be with us over the course of the day today who have given up their time to share their expertise with us. It's pretty incredible that they're willing to give time out of their day to help enrich our lives. And so I'm incredibly excited and thankful for that. I know you'll show them over the course of the day how amazing Millis High School students are through your questions and through your participation. So I appreciate that as always, as we all do, for what you guys all bring to the table. And please don't be afraid to ask questions of our presenters through the various chat features along the way. When you're in your whole school presentations today, you'll be able to type questions into your Zoom chat. And then your teachers will be able to relay the questions to the presenters. So please don't hesitate to do that. They want to hear your questions. They want to hear from you, and they want to be able to answer those questions that you have. I also want to say thank you to the people and groups that made today happen, because we wouldn't have been able to have this day without them. First would be the Millis Educational Resource Initiative team. You guys know them more as Merit. The Kyle Cares Foundation, Nirvana Tea House and Cafe, and of course, and I think one of our biggest thanks, in addition to our presenters and our sponsors, goes out to Mrs. Molinari and Miss Sullivan, who have worked tirelessly to make this day happen for all of us, and have stepped out of their comfort zone to do this in the virtual world, which we've never done before. And I would say they've done an amazing job putting together an incredible group of speakers and activities for all of you today that I think you're going to take a lot out of, and it's going to make for a great Wednesday. So I want to start off the day with our first speaker. That'll go till 9 o'clock, and then you'll jump into your first breakout sessions. And I would just remind all of you that during the course of the day today, if you're questioning your schedule, head back to Schedge. Everything that you need to know is in your Schedge accounts. Every link and everything you need to know for the day, so you can jump back in there. So without further ado, let's get moving with the day. And our first speaker, who I'm excited to be able to introduce, our first speaker today, she brings a powerful and important message. She's an award-winning activist and speaker visiting schools across the United States to connect with teens. At 21, she started a nonprofit group and fell in love with activism and social change. She's been seen on major news stations, was a guest on the #1 true crime podcast on iTunes, and once wore a shiny crown for a whole year. When she isn't working or volunteering, she's usually out on her bike, laughing at cat photos on Instagram, or writing for hours at a chic cafe. Please welcome our first speaker of the day, Ashley Bendikson.
Good morning, Millis High School students. I'm so excited to be here with you today. And believe this or not, I was actually supposed to be with all of you last April when this whole health and wellness fair was being planned. And so naturally, like all of you, there was a big wrench thrown in that plan. And here we are. And despite the circumstances, I truly am grateful that we can still connect in this format. So it's new for you. This is also very new for me. I am used to being on a stage and interacting one-on-one, but I hope that you see this in the same way that I do this morning, which is that we can have a real conversation about a really important subject matter in maybe even a more intimate way than before. So I do want you to engage. I do want you to feel like you can ask questions and open up, because this right now is an hour where you can focus on you. You can not think about schoolwork right now, the million things you have going on. This next hour is a moment for us to share together, to talk about our mental health, our physical health, and how we can make this year an amazing year, or at least a less challenging year than last year was. So with that being said, yes, I'm speaking to all of you, but in my opinion, I'm speaking to you, whoever is watching on the other end of this, and I'm here with you in the next hour. And with that being said, all that I ask is that you first and foremost have a pen and paper aside, because I am going to ask you to write a few things down. And also, as I'm speaking, if you come up with any questions, take a note, because I'll have a chance to answer those at the end. But also, my second ask of you is that for the next 50 minutes or so, let's just be present in this moment together. I know that there's constant distractions with social media and you're on your technology, but let's just take a moment to be present, to agree that we're just going to be here in this moment and really just learn and grow and get the most value that we can. So again, I'm so excited to be with you. And my name is Ashley, in case you caught that. And you can find me on social. You can send me questions if you want to, but please know that what your principal said, send your teachers the questions, because they will then funnel them to me at the end. So today we are kicking off your health and wellness fair. Admittedly, I saw a Twitter post of I guess not last year's, 2 years ago, and you had massage therapists at the school. Not gonna lie, I would have been getting a massage today with all of you, but I'm glad that we can talk about kind of the other side of health and wellness. So we all talk about physical health and wellness. That's something you're taught in school for many years. But this morning, I want to touch upon kind of this emotional health and wellness. How can we stay strong, stay encouraged, and stay motivated when times are really challenging and difficult, when there's uncertainty, when there's disappointments? This is something that I feel like I've been on this marathon of understanding this concept my whole life. And so this morning, I want to share a little bit of my story with you, because like you, I first experienced extreme uncertainty and unbearable disappointments and challenges as a student when I was in high school and a little bit into college. This was the first time that I ever had experienced such negative emotions, and many days didn't know how to handle them, how to change my circumstances. And unfortunately for me, it created a whole array of other problems for me as a young adult. And now that I'm older, and now that I speak and I teach, I know what I could have done differently. And hopefully, my story this morning, at least one, makes you feel less alone, two, gives you some pointers, and three, really teaches you some universal skills that you can apply no matter what is going on in your life, so that you can feel a little bit better. So before I tell you my story, though, I want you to grab that piece of paper that I asked you to pull up. And I want you just to think for a moment about your emotional well-being. We all have some type of negative emotion going on at times, whether it's stress, anxiety, fear. Boredom is also a negative emotion. Some of us are very just bored these days. That's okay. I want you to think about, we're going into a brand new year. I want you to think about one emotion that you want to embody this year. What is one emotion that you really want to feel more of? Maybe it's calm, maybe it's happiness, maybe it's confidence. Just think of one emotion that you feel would make this year so much better, and just take a little note of that. It's okay if something doesn't come to mind right away, but I would say whatever the first word is that pops into your head, write that down and just kind of make that your word for this moment and for this day. And then we'll talk about how you can start to work on that throughout the year as well. So I'm going to write my word down. All right, I'm doing this with you. All right. So like I said, let me begin this morning with a story. And I want to preface this story just by saying that I'm going to share some very personal things, and some of what I went through as a teenager might be stuff that you've seen or that you've gone through. And if you at any moment feel upset or feel a little bit triggered, you can totally, like, you have my permission to get up, walk away, shake it off, put on your favorite song, and just get back in a good headspace. That is the beauty of this format that we're in. You can take exactly what you need. That is the name of the day. We are here for your health and wellness, your mental health and wellness. So if anything I say triggers you, please just get up, take a breather, and come back. So as I mentioned, when I was in high school, this was when I first felt like the world as I knew it got turned upside down. When I went into high school, my freshman year, I was so excited for this new chapter. You know, high school had all these promises of new friends and clubs and opportunities and figuring out what you love to study and then eventually getting ready for college. And it was just such an exciting time. And so I went into my freshman year of high school optimistic, hopeful, and just excited for this whole new chapter. Unfortunately for me, very quickly, any dreams or goals that I had from my high school experience were just turned on their head overnight. And it started really with my first high school dance. So I was 14 years old. First, freshman, I think it was homecoming dance, and I was so excited to go. I had, gotten all dressed up with a few friends, and we were just excited to go and meet people. And to give you a little background of who I was before high school. So, like many kids in middle school, I was a pretty awkward looking kid. Like, I came from a family of a lot of older cousins. And so I wore hand-me-down clothes. I had thick glasses because I was legally blind. I had braces. And so I got picked on in middle school. But that's not totally out of the ordinary. We know that a lot of people get picked on and kids are just mean sometimes, and it doesn't really mean anything. But when I was in middle school, it did mean something to me. I remembered, not feeling really good about my image or, wondering why I didn't fit in. And one of the things that stood out to me as well was when I was in middle school, I can remember some of the girls in my classes were already like dating and stuff. And I grew up when Disney movies started coming out and romance was everywhere and boy bands were everywhere. And so I was a little boy crazy in middle school. So I remember thinking, like, why do they have these relationships and why are these people getting flowers on Valentine's Day and I'm not? And so I didn't have the best self-esteem coming out of middle school. But again, like I said, when I went into high school, I said, this is a new chapter. I got kind of a new look. I got rid of the braces and I got contacts instead of my glasses. And so I was excited for whatever was to come. And so I tell you that because when I was at this high school dance, I was absolutely thrilled, beside myself, could not believe when, for the first time ever in all the middle school dances I'd gone to up to that point, finally a boy came and asked me to dance. And I felt so special. Like, this was a guy who was older. He came over and I'm like, me? Like, it was crazy. And so I ended up dancing with him that night. And again, just feeling like, yes, high school is awesome. And everything was going great. And by the end of the night, he ended up asking me for my phone number and he became my first boyfriend. And this was at a time where I was not allowed to date. Trust me, my parents were not cool with me having a boyfriend, but they were okay with him calling the house and us just kind of having this phone talking relationship. And not to age myself, but this was before cell phones. So my boyfriend would have to call my parents' house and I would take the cordless phone into the bedroom. But that was our relationship. And again, I felt like, high school is great. Everything's going awesome. I really liked this guy. And I felt so special that he had picked me, right? That he wanted to actually date me and make me his girlfriend. So we spent a few months just talking on the phone, and I felt like I really could trust him. I felt like I really knew him. And all we kept talking about was, we need to spend more time together. Let's go to a movie. Let's plan a date. Let's find a way to make this happen versus just talking on the phone and seeing each other at school all the time. And so that's what we decided to do. We came up with this plan. We put together this whole like secret operation of how we'd meet up at the mall and go out on this first date. And when that day came, I was nervous. I was excited. Like, we hadn't kissed. I mean, I hadn't done anything like that. I mean, I was only 14. And when we were at the movie, I kept thinking like, oh my goodness, what if he kisses me today? This is going to be the day of my first kiss. Excited, just on cloud nine, ready the whole time. And long story short, before the movie ended, at one point he did reach over, but he didn't try to kiss me. He tried to do other things, and we'll just leave it at that. And at first, I didn't really know what to do. And I was confused. I wasn't sure if maybe I had implied that I wanted to do more than kiss, or that I was okay with him putting his hands on me in certain ways. And also, I liked him and I didn't want to upset him or disappoint him. And so I kind of just giggled and froze up and tried to brush it off, and yes, tried to pretend I was just trying to focus on the movie. And eventually that just stopped, right? He just watched the movie with me and we ended up leaving. And later that night when I got home, I didn't feel good about what had happened. I wasn't super concerned, but I knew I didn't feel comfortable with it. But eventually, around dinner time, he called the house again, as he did every single night, and we talked on the phone, and it was as if everything was normal. He said, "Today was amazing. I loved seeing you. I just want to be around you even more." And so again, I felt special, and I wondered if I was just pulling things out of proportion, and we just continued to date. Now, what happened on that first date isn't necessarily anything totally wrong. There's confusion sometimes if you don't communicate and talk to each other. But for me, that should have been a little red flag to watch out, or to at least talk to someone, because that was the moment that I stopped talking to people or asking for guidance or help. And sadly, what that relationship turned into was the next 2 years of my life dating this person who became very unhealthy as a partner. So it kind of started with, he would crack jokes about me in front of his friends. He would say things that made me feel bad about myself. He would ridicule something I was wearing or something I said. And so he started to be kind of verbally abusive, but then he would apologize and say he's just kidding. But then, kind of coming off of what had happened on that first date, he started to be a little bit more pressureful on the next date. Every time we hung out, he would try to get me to do things I wasn't comfortable with. And before I knew it, I was just in this cycle of verbal, emotional, and sadly sexual abuse with somebody that I thought liked me and I thought I could trust. Now, one of the problems, and you might be wondering, well, why would you stay with someone? Why did you date him for 2 years? Well, one day he would say he loved me and cared about me. And then the next day he would mistreat me. And then the next day he would tell me he loved me again. And it was a really confusing cycle. But also, I didn't know anything about dating at all. I'd never talked to my parents about dating. I didn't really know anyone in a relationship. And so I wasn't sure if this behavior was normal. And even if I did feel like I wanted to talk to someone about it, it felt so embarrassing and it was so personal that I just shut down. And this was one of the first mistakes I made, was not opening up when something bad in my life was going on. Because what ended up happening was I made all of the wrong decisions as I tried to cope on my own. And so now, as a high school student, I was so distracted and so anxious and had such self-esteem struggles that I could not focus on school. I couldn't focus on my grades. I was not joining any extracurriculars. And even worse, I was so anxious and stressed and depressed because of what was going on that now I was turning to some really unhealthy coping mechanisms. I started drinking at a young age. I dreaded going to school. I was self-harming here and there. I developed disordered eating habits and just stopped taking care of myself. And the bubbly, outgoing Ashley that once existed just had become invisible to herself. And every day felt so unbearable. I would wake up and just feel like I can't do this. I can't go to school today. And on top of everything I was dealing with, he had also told all these stories, which turned into rumors, which meant that my small school then latched on and I became the girl that everybody bullied. And, I would see writing on the bathroom wall about me. And so high school, I remember feeling like, why me? Why is this happening to me? Why is this my life? And I didn't think that I had any power to change it. So, like I said, I didn't tell anyone. I didn't talk to my parents. I didn't go to my counselor. I didn't go to my school nurse. I kept it all bottled up. Huge mistake. Eventually, that relationship ended only because he ended up moving on to someone else. And that was a gift in disguise because now I could move on. And while the last 2 years of high school were easier, they were still challenging. I was still healing from some of the emotional wounds that I had experienced. But slowly and eventually getting back to me, my best friend encouraged me to join a club at school. So little things started to help. And when I finally graduated, I just kept thinking, all right, this is now when I can start fresh. This is the new chapter because now I'm going to go to a college far away, start over, have a clean slate. Now I've learned, I've grown, I've become stronger because of this, and now I'm going to have this amazing life. And so when I went to college, again, just like the beginning of high school, I was so optimistic. What I never could have imagined is that my experience in college would turn my life upside down more than high school ever did. My first year was good. I had new friends. I thought I was on this uphill climb. I thought my life was finally coming back together. And I even thought that even more so when after that first year of college, I met the most amazing man. And I remember thinking in that moment, finally, this is what I deserved. This person was nothing like the guy I had dated in high school, right? He was respectful, he was patient, he didn't call me names, he didn't make me feel small. I felt so good and happy and whole around him that I never would have expected that he too would start to damage and destroy my life. But now, as someone who speaks about relationships and personal struggles and the stuff we go through and how we let other people impact our lives, now I see the pattern that was true in both situations. Just like the first boyfriend, everything seemed amazing in the beginning. And then eventually, over time, little unhealthy behaviors started to show up. And that's what happened with this second boyfriend. Again, I'm focusing on college, thinking things are going well, but I'm dating someone who, within the first few months after everything going great, started to want to spend all of their time with me. And that wasn't a red flag. I thought, oh, that's really nice. They love me. They're as excited about me as I am about them. They want to spend all their time with me. I felt good about that. I didn't see that as a warning sign that maybe they were a little controlling or maybe had some jealousy or trust issues. And so we started dating. And within those first few months, again, I felt like I was spending all of my time with him. Sometimes he would do it in a really subtle way, though. He wouldn't say, I want you to hang out with me today and no one else. But he would kind of guilt trip me. I'd say, oh, I'm seeing Melissa today. We're going to go to the mall and shop. And he would say, oh, I missed you all day. I thought we could hang out. I went and got movie tickets and I thought I could order us dinner. And so I would say, oh, all right, I'll just reschedule with Melissa and we'll hang out. But overnight, I was spending every minute with him. And we had actually met in my hometown. So we didn't meet on my college campus. So that was a relief because I thought, well, all right, once I go back to school after this summer, then I can have a little break from him. We can have some healthier boundaries with our time. But as I was getting ready to go back to college and move back into my dorm, he didn't like that idea. He was not comfortable with me going away and living somewhere without him. What if I met someone else? He would never know. What if I leave him? And so that became this whole new argument. And one night, this argument got so bad that he just absolutely lost it. He was getting in and out of my car. He was yelling. He was slamming doors. He was calling me names. He was accusing me of things. And I couldn't understand what was going on. I had never seen him get angry. I'd never seen him raise his voice. And so I tried to calm him down and figure out, how to make him happy, let him know that I care about him, that I'm not going to hurt him. And it was just the craziest argument. And again, it almost goes back to what I said earlier of I had never experienced anything like this, so I didn't know what it was. And all I wanted to do was resolve that fight, make sure that he knew I cared about him, and move on. But that first fight was one of many. That should have been the red flag that flagged me to it all, where he just was not trusting, and he had a lot of issues of his own that were going to ruin my life. And so, as crazy as it sounds, when it came time for me to move back into my dorm room that day, he got in a car that he had borrowed because he didn't have a car at the time, and he drove all the way to my dorm building, which was about an hour and a half, 2 hours away from where he lived. And he was causing a huge scene. I was in my dorm room unpacking boxes, heard all this yelling, and there he was outside. Again, I went into management mode. I'm running outside, trying to calm him down, bring him in, talk to him. He ended up staying in with me in my dorm room that night. And as wild as this is, he stayed with me every night of that entire school year in my dorm room. He figured out security guard schedules so he could come in and out. He made friends with people in the building because he was very charming. And before I knew it, he was around all the time. So here I am now in college, thinking I'm on this fresh start, clean slate, dealing with almost the same issues that I was in high school. He's around all the time. He wants to spend time with me. And again, I'm not focusing on my grades. I'm not joining any clubs. I'm not taking care of myself. I'm putting his needs first at all times. And it would even get to the point where sometimes he would, start an argument with me right before I had to go to my class, knowing that it was going to make me late and they'd lock the doors. So it was just this really toxic situation that I was living in. And as all of these behaviors went on, eventually I had no more friends of my own. I stopped seeing all my friends. And if I tried to see my own friends, he would get upset. I wasn't really talking to my family. I wasn't doing any of my own hobbies or really anything for me anymore. And my whole life became consumed by this person. And also, on top of all of this, he started to get much more angry, and his arguments and his outbursts would just get loud and scary. And I was always trying to do anything I could to just calm him down. And again, you're probably asking, well, why don't you just dump this dude? Easier said than done. But it was just like the first relationship, where one day they would be mean and make me feel bad, and then they'd apologize. And I would think, oh, like they didn't mean it. It was a one-time incident and we're moving forward now. Fast forward to kind of where this relationship brought me. My parents one day witnessed a very loud argument, and instead of helping me, they kicked me out and told me I wasn't welcome back at the house. All of my grades were failing. Some of my classes I had totally missed and just not even gone to. My bank account was drained. And then before my second year of school, my boyfriend totaled my car, knowing that it was my only resource to still get back to college and that I had no support from anyone else. And without a car and without money and with my failing grades and no support from my family, I dropped out of college then and there and never went back to that school ever again. I threw away my goals and my dreams because I didn't think I had any other option. I was in survival mode and I was alone in the world and I didn't know what else to do. And just like high school again, I was thinking, why me? Why is this my life? Why does this stuff happen to me? After that, I became homeless. I had nowhere to live. I'm talking, I was sleeping in the woods sometimes. My whole life crumbled. And I want to pause here because I think this brings me to my first lesson. So today we're talking about how do we manage challenges in life? How do we manage plot twists? How do we manage uncertainty or when things just crumble and don't work as we thought they would, or we find ourselves in a really difficult space? I'm going to switch over to my slides because I want to teach here. Eventually, my story is going to turn around. I promise this isn't doom and gloom today. I'm going to share with you eventually how I turned my whole life around and how, despite my challenges, my life is now more awesome than I ever could have dreamed. But a lot of times you hear people talk about, well, this is how you manage things and eventually everything will work out. Well, what is this process in between? How do we go from rock bottom to suddenly thriving and being successful? Everyone is going to have a different process when it comes to challenges. You have some people who just freak out, and that is okay. There's people that feel anxious over little things and big things. There's people that don't know how to cope. There's people like me and like some of you who just maybe don't know what to do with these negative emotions, and they start to take over. And then meanwhile, you might have friends that are just like, it's all good, relax, right? And you wonder, how do they do this, right? It's like some of us are like social distancing, what? And then some of us are running through the fields. So everyone's going to have a different approach to challenges, but there's kind of some universal ways that we can all approach it. And the very first step in handling obstacles is, number one, to own your emotions. So many of us by default want to just avoid discussing our emotions. If we're feeling anxious, we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to face it. If we're sad or depressed, we don't tell anyone. We keep it to ourselves. And this is one of the most damaging things that we can do because we dismiss what needs attention. And sometimes, like me, you think, well, I'm being strong because I'm going to get through it on my own and figure this all out. And there is something to say about that. It's okay to be a self-healer. It's okay to be self-reliant, but you have to own whatever's going on instead of just trying to avoid it, not talk about it, ignore it, or hide it. And I look back all the time and think, had I just talked to a school counselor in my freshman year, maybe none of all of this downhill stuff would have happened. So it's about being aware of your emotions and allowing yourself to work through them. You're going to become stronger and you're going to feel better by working through your emotions, not just trying to avoid them or ignore them until they hopefully go away. And once you can start to own your emotions, then you can actually say, okay, well, how do I get rid of this? Or how do I move from anxiety to peace? And this is part of the beginning process. So you own your emotions. And part of that also is being able to name your emotions, right? A lot of times we say, I'm anxious, I have anxiety, but what is it really? Maybe it's fear. Maybe it's disappointment. Maybe it's frustration. And the more specific you can get and really look at that, you'll be able to start making changes. I did not own my emotions. I did not tell anyone that I was crying myself to sleep. I didn't think it was a big deal that I was using unhealthy coping mechanisms. I just thought, this is me and, I'm just going to figure it out on my own. And as a result, I never found solutions. 10, 12 years later, the problems were solved. But when you work with someone, when you ask someone for support, that's when you can fast track. So think about it in the means of like working out, right? Let's say you want to build your arm muscles, right? You want to get strong. or you want some abs, or you want to be a faster runner. If you're going to build your physical health, there's a good chance that, yeah, you can take a few years and figure it out, maybe get results. But if you hire a trainer, they're going to say, okay, we're going to start getting you results as early as next week. So part of being emotionally strong and healthy, it's the same thing. You want to build your emotional muscles too. And one of the best ways to do that is to get a guide, talk to a counselor, talk to someone else, because they're going to provide you with real tools. And there's something about just talking to someone that will make you instantly feel better. So own your emotions, seek solutions, ask yourself, what can I do? And to give you just a little insight, some of the solutions that could exist are things like setting boundaries. One of the things I never did was set boundaries on my time, on my emotions. I let the people I dated, I let my peers, the kids that bullied me at school, just walk all over me. So you can set boundaries with people or with things. Or maybe it's self-care. Instead of turning to an unhealthy coping mechanism, maybe you journal, maybe you find art very therapeutic. So there's self-care practices, and this is what someone can help you uncover so that you can start to seek solutions instead of suffering on your own, because you do not need to be on your own right now. This is a time, if ever there was a time, for us to work together, and there's people out there that want to help and support you in every way. And as I kind of mentioned, this was my mistake. So that's high school Ashley right there. Also, hashtag my first selfie. And this was on a disposable camera. Yes, we've come a long way with technology, but I did not think anyone could understand. And I really felt like I was strong and I was tough because I was doing it on my own. Well, now I look back and think, what a disaster. So even if you think you've got this, talk to someone. And then step 2 is owning your thoughts. And before I get into that, I want to come back to my story. So I left off saying that I had dropped out of college. And really, I feel like I was, if not at rock bottom, almost there. I didn't know what to do. The plan that life had created that I thought was out there, you go to high school, you graduate, you go to college, you graduate, you get a good job. The whole plan had gone away, disappeared from my life. I had no support network, no one to turn to, except for my abusive boyfriend. He was the only person left in my life. And I was really in survival mode. Like I said, I dropped out right before the fall semester. So I thought winter is coming up soon. We need to find a place to live. And my only goal was just to find a place to have a roof over our head. I picked up a waitressing job. I worked as much as I could. I saved all the money that I made and eventually got us a little apartment. And that did not last long. This was the beginning of the end of that relationship. Behind closed doors, he was just angry often. He had more accusations. It was just, there was always something that upset him. And also behind closed doors, he was much more, I want to say, physically aggressive. All that time, I used to say, well, he doesn't hit me. He's never hit me. This isn't that bad. But behind closed doors, he would do things like get angry and throw a remote, or, kick a table, and he broke a brand new table. And I started to get really uncomfortable with this and really nervous for my safety. And I finally made the decision that I had to get out when one day I was coming home from a waitressing shift. I got home 15 minutes later than I had said I would. And he was so angry, and he was accusing me of having been out with someone else, that he would not let me in the apartment. And he got so mad, and he looked at me through the glass panes of the apartment door, and he punched the glass, and it went into my face. And I can remember thinking, oh my gosh, did that just happen? How is this my life? I need to get out. That's all I knew. I needed to leave this person. And so I spent the next day or two thinking about this, how to break up, how to communicate that we needed to end. And I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was being courageous, you know, on my own, deciding to break up and hoping he'll just walk away. I had the conversation with him. He accepted. He apologized for all he'd ever done. He said he knew what he was doing was wrong, and he packed his bags and he left. But unfortunately, what I know now is that when you break up with someone who is abusive or toxic, you never know how they're going to respond. They can get very upset and come back and lash out. And 2 weeks later, unfortunately, he came back to the apartment where I was, and he broke his way into the apartment, and I was severely physically attacked by him. And he had me on the ground with his hands around my throat, screaming that he loved me and I never cared and I ruined his life and blah, blah. But I was laying there thinking, my life is hopeless. Like this, how is this my life at 19 years old? And I felt so defeated. And I was just so sad that this is where my life was, that I just laid there and kind of gave up. Eventually, he got off of me and walked away, and I was able to catch my breath, and I left the apartment and ran up the street, got to a payphone, and called the police. Now, I know that's heavy, but there's a purpose to me telling this. The police came and arrested him that night. And a few days later, I had to go to court. And this was the moment that changed my entire life, that taught me how to handle hard things, that became the moment where everything got better from this moment on. I walked out of that courthouse and I took a breather, and I suddenly realized my boyfriend was not right here, right next to me. It was the first time in 2 whole years that I didn't have to think about what he wanted, what he was going to say, whether something I did would upset him. And I felt so free. And I started thinking, gosh, I dropped out of college. I lost my friends, my family. I'm broke. I have nowhere to go now. Where I live isn't safe. I thought, oh, like all the things that I've missed because of this relationship. But then it hit me. I have not been living my whole young adult life because I have let boyfriends, bad friends, my peers, and everyone around me dictate how I feel, how I think, how I act, and I let my own self get in the way by not ever seeking help. And I was so fed up. I was so done. And all I wanted was a better life. And I don't know what it was. Some people would say God came to me. Some people would say the universe spoke to me, or I had an aha moment. I heard this little voice that was like, Ashley, go. You're done with that life. Go forward, change everything, make up for lost opportunities. All of that is a complete joke now that you're looking back at it. You deserve more and you can have more. And I was so, despite having no resources and I was in the face of every limitation possible, I knew I wanted my life to be better. I wanted to feel better. I wanted to be happier. I wanted better people around me. I wanted to change my whole life. And more importantly, I knew I did not want to be a quote unquote victim of my circumstance.